The December snow fell softly on Fifth Avenue, muting the usual city noise into something almost peaceful. Thomas Bennett stood at his office window on the 42nd floor, watching the white blanket cover the streets below. At 58, he had everything the world said mattered. CEO of a successful investment firm, a corner office with a view. More money than he could spend. But as he stood there that evening, watching families hurry past with shopping bags and laughter, he felt the familiar ache of silence. His wife, Catherine, had passed away 6 years ago. Cancer. They'd never had children. There was always time, they'd said, until suddenly there wasn't. His days had become a routine of work, an empty apartment, and microwaved dinners eaten while watching the evening news. Thomas checked his watch. 7:30. Everyone else had left hours ago, heading home to warm houses and waiting families. He gathered his coat and briefcase, stepping into the elevator with a tired sigh. The December air bit at his face as he emerged onto the street. He pulled his burgundy scarf tighter and began his usual walk to the subway. That's when he heard it, a small voice, bright despite the cold. "Excuse me, mister." Thomas turned to find a little girl, sitting on a cardboard box in the alley between buildings. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, with golden curls spilling from under a worn knit cap. Her gray and orange jacket looked too thin for the weather, and she clutched a brown teddy bear to her chest. Despite everything, her blue eyes sparkled with something he hadn't expected: hope. Next to her sat a modest birthday cupcake with a single lit candle, its flame dancing in the winter breeze. A small jar with fairy lights cast a warm glow around her makeshift seat. "Yes?" Thomas heard himself say, stopping despite his instinct to keep walking. "It's my birthday," she announced, as if this explained everything. "I'm 7 today. Do you want to share my cupcake? My daddy says you should always share on your birthday." Thomas looked around, confused. "Where is your father?" "He went to get us some hot chocolate," she said matter-of-factly. "He works really hard. We're just between houses right now." That's what Daddy calls it. The pieces fell into place with an uncomfortable clarity. The cardboard boxes, the thin jacket, the alley. "I see," Thomas said quietly. He should leave. This wasn't his concern. But something in the child's face, the dignity in her poverty, the light that poverty hadn't dimmed, kept him rooted to the spot. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma," she said brightly. "Emma Rose Patterson." "What's yours?" "Thomas. Thomas Bennett." "That's a very important-sounding name," Emma said with the seriousness only children possess. "Are you important?" Thomas almost laughed. "Some people think so. Do you have a family, Mr. Thomas?" The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading through him. He hesitated, then shook his head. "No, not anymore." Emma's face softened with understanding beyond her years. "Oh, you don't have a family, too?" The way she said it, too, made his chest tighten. This child, who had so little, saw their loneliness as something they shared. "Then you should definitely share my cupcake," Emma declared. Nobody should be alone on a birthday. That's a rule. Before Thomas could respond, a man appeared at the mouth of the alley carrying 2 steaming cups. He was perhaps 40, with salt and pepper hair and lines around, his eyes that spoke of worry and sleepless nights. He wore a jacket that had seen better days, but he carried himself with quiet dignity. "Emma, sweetheart, who's this?" The man's voice held caution but not hostility. "Daddy, this is Mr. Thomas. He doesn't have a family either. So I invited him to my birthday party." Emma beamed as if she'd solved a great puzzle. The man, Emma's father, looked at Thomas with eyes that had learned to be wary. But then he saw something that made him extend his hand. "Robert Patterson," he said. "I apologize if Emma bothered you. She's got a big heart." Thomas shook his hand, feeling the calluses of someone who'd known hard work. "Thomas Bennett." "And she didn't bother me. She invited me to her birthday." Robert's expression shifted, surprise. Then something like embarrassment, then resignation. "We don't have much to offer." "Mr. Bennett, just a store-bought cupcake and some hot chocolate." "Daddy, that's plenty," Emma protested. "It's not about how much you have. It's about sharing what you do have." "You taught me that." Robert's eyes glistened and he looked away quickly. Thomas understood in that moment what kind of man he was. The kind who taught his daughter to be generous even when they had nothing, who maintained her sense of wonder even as their world had fallen apart. "May I sit?" Thomas asked, surprising himself. Emma's face lit up like the fairy lights in her jar. "Yes, here, you can sit on this box. Daddy, give Mr. Thomas some hot chocolate." And so Thomas Bennett, CEO of Bennett Capital Management, found himself sitting on a cardboard box in a snowy alley, sharing a cupcake with a homeless 7-year-old girl and her father. "Make a wish, Emma," Robert said softly, pulling out a lighter to relight the candle that had blown out. Emma closed her eyes tight, her small face scrunched in concentration. When she opened them, she blew out the candle with determination. "What did you wish for?" Thomas asked. "I can't tell or it won't come true," Emma said seriously. Then she carefully broke the cupcake into 3 pieces, handing the largest to her father, a medium piece to Thomas, and keeping the smallest for herself. "Emma, you take the bigger piece," Robert protested. "Daddy, you always give me the bigger piece. Today it's your turn." They ate in silence for a moment, the snow continuing its gentle fall. Thomas couldn't remember the last time food had tasted this meaningful. "How long have you been out here?" Thomas asked quietly. Robert shifted uncomfortably. 3 months. I was a construction foreman, 20 years with the same company. They downsized. I found some day labor work, but it's not steady. We were in a shelter for a while, but he glanced at Emma. It wasn't safe for her. "This isn't ideal, but at least I can keep her close." "Robert works so hard," Emma added proudly. "Yesterday he helped build a whole fence, and the day before he moved furniture for a nice lady who gave us $10. The pride in her voice, the absence of self-pity, it struck Thomas deeply. Here was dignity in its purest form. "I have a daughter, too," Thomas found himself saying, the lie slipping out before he could stop it. Then he corrected himself. "No, that's not true. I'm sorry. I had hoped to have children once, but life had other plans." Emma reached over and patted his hand with her small one. "That's okay, Mr. Thomas. Sometimes things don't work out how we planned. But that doesn't mean good things can't still happen." "Emma's very wise," Robert said, his voice rough with emotion. "After her mother left us 2 years ago, I thought Emma would be angry or sad. But she sees the good in everything. I don't know how she does it." "I learned it from you, Daddy," Emma said simply. "You always say every day is a gift, even the hard ones." Thomas felt something crack open inside him, something that had been frozen for a very long time. "Mr. Patterson." "Robert," Thomas began carefully, "I know we just met, and I know you have every reason to be suspicious of strangers. But I'd like to help if you'd let me." Robert stiffened immediately. "We're not asking for handouts, Mr. Bennett." "I know you're not. That's precisely why I'm offering." Thomas pulled out his wallet, but Robert held up his hand. "I appreciate it, but no. I need to provide for my daughter with my own 2 hands." "That's what a father does." Thomas understood. He'd have felt the same way. "Then let me put it differently. I run a company. We're always looking for good people. Do you have any management experience?" Robert looked skeptical. "Construction management. But that's not exactly office work." "Management is management," Thomas said. "Coordinating teams, solving problems, working under pressure. My facilities director could use someone with practical experience. The pay is decent, and it comes with health insurance." "Mr. Bennett, I appreciate what you're trying to do." "Daddy," Emma interrupted, "maybe this is what I wished for." Both men looked at her. "You did say good things can still happen," she reminded her father gently. Robert's resistance crumbled. Thomas saw the exhaustion beneath the pride, the weight of carrying everything alone for so long. "At least come by for an interview," Thomas pressed. "If it doesn't work out, nothing lost. But if it does, Emma deserves a warm bed, Robert, and you deserve a chance." Robert's throat worked. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Why would you do this for strangers?" Thomas looked at Emma, still clutching her teddy bear, her eyes full of hope and trust. He thought of all the evenings he'd spent alone in his apartment, surrounded by expensive furniture and profound emptiness. "Because a very wise 7-year-old just reminded me that nobody should be alone," Thomas said quietly. "And because sometimes strangers are just family we haven't met yet." Emma smiled, a smile that could melt winter itself. "Can Mr. Thomas come to my next birthday too?" she asked her father. Robert laughed, a sound rusty from disuse. "If he wants to, sweetheart." "I'd be honored," Thomas said and meant it. They talked for another hour, making plans. Thomas learned that Robert had been a straight-A student in high school, a veteran who'd served honorably, a man who'd done everything right until the world shifted beneath his feet. He learned that Emma loved to draw, that she wanted to be an artist someday, that she still believed in magic even though life had given her every reason not to. When Thomas finally stood to leave, Emma hugged his legs tightly. "Thank you for sharing my birthday, Mr. Thomas," she said. "You made it special." "No, Emma," Thomas said, his voice thick. "Thank you. You reminded me of something important." "What's that?" "That family isn't just the people we're born with. Sometimes it's the people we choose. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, they choose us too." Emma beamed up at him. "Does that mean you're family now?" Thomas looked at Robert, who nodded slowly, a small smile on his weathered face. "Yes," Thomas said. "I suppose it does." As he walked toward the subway, Thomas felt lighter than he had in years. He pulled out his phone and made several calls, to HR about the job, to a friend who managed apartments, to his assistant with instructions for Monday morning. Behind him, in a snow-dusted alley, a little girl and her father held each other close, the fairy lights casting their warm glow into the winter night. Sometimes the most important birthdays aren't the ones we plan. They're the ones that find us when we least expect it. In places we'd never think to look, with people who teach us that hope isn't about having everything. It's about sharing what we have. And sometimes, when we're very fortunate, a child's simple question, "You don't have a family too?" becomes the answer we've been searching for all along. The snow continued to fall, gentle and persistent, covering the city in a blanket of new beginnings. Sometimes the greatest gift we can receive is the opportunity to give.